Welcome to the Roar Mindset, Leading Through Chaos. I'm Peter Brandberger, and I help leaders embrace chaos to turn disruption into an advantage. Each episode brings stories and strategies to help you stop fighting disruption, lead with clarity, and thrive in uncertain times. Today, I'm joined by Chris Kelly, a global technology leader, strategist, and operations expert. Chris spent more than 28 years in the semiconductor industry in leadership roles that spanned engineering, architecture, product design, product management, and general management. He has lived and worked on 2 continents and has a deep passion for international leadership and talent development. During his time at Intel, Chris served as VP of Client Architecture, where he led the development of next-generation PC client silicon, platforms, and software products. He helped transform the way Intel defined products by integrating critical software capabilities to improve the competitiveness across the global PC ecosystem. Earlier in his career, Chris served as Chief of Staff for Intel's Executive VP of Client Products, leading major organizational and strategic changes, resource shifts, and engineering leadership transitions. He has also built strong relationships with ecosystem partners and led strategic analysis of external acquisition opportunities. Chris and I worked together at Intel, and we left at similar times. I've always appreciated the way he brings honesty to relationships and a humanness to leading. In this episode, which is part 1 of 2, we talk about stepping into new spaces when the way forward is uncertain. We explore what he learned after leaving a long corporate career, how long-distance walking has shaped his thinking, and we dive into 2 leadership stories from his time at Intel around reference boards and senior technical leadership. Chris offers lessons about shelving ego, learning in the middle of the project, dealing with mistakes without personalization, and avoiding the trap of vicious compliance. And at the end of the episode, I offer a few more suggestions to deal with these themes. Enjoy part 1 of the conversation with Chris. Well, Chris, thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you and good to catch up since we've left Intel and been there together for many years.
Yeah.
Let's start off with a question about what matters most to you as a way of people to get to know a little bit of who you are.
Sure. Yeah. I think you and I left the company about the same time. It's been about 2 years, and we both spent a lot of time there. The last couple of years, so I'm retired now. I'm not actually working full time, and the first thing that really matters to me over the course of the last couple of years has been to detoxify from working in a big company. I don't think that's specific to Intel. I think it's just large company stuff. I've noticed my stress level, my blood pressure, and my general mindset change over the course of the last couple of years, and trying to cultivate a mindset of abundance again, as opposed to, I think in any large company, sort of almost naturally gravitate towards the scarcities of corporate life. Do you have enough budget to do this? Do you have enough people to do that? I want to travel there. No, you can't do that because, there's only so much travel budget. And there's always this kind of like battle, no matter what it is. And it cultivates or almost rewards a scarcity mindset. So I'm trying to cultivate an abundance mindset. And that's working, which is good.
Yeah.
Do you find the same thing, by the way, that since you've left, this the abundance scarcity scale is different?
Yes. There's a book called Abundance that just came out a couple months ago.
I read it.
I read that. Like, it's just
wonderful.
like, oh, yes. But I think if I read it while I was at Intel, I'd been like,
right. Ezra climbs up a tree. No, actually, he probably has it right.
I think I would have been less open to the premise of abundance. But yes, there's so much to do and there's so much opportunity and it's not limiting. And like competition is another thing I'd add in there. Like,
very good.
Budget constraints, but competition, and it's like this or that, and compete against this person or help with this and drive this. And
yes, exactly.
Like, well, we can do these all, can't we? And can't we do multiple kind of things? And
yeah. It's funny. Corporate life, again, it's not specific to Intel. I think it's any large company, really in any industry. It doesn't even have to be specific to tech. Is you have these little competitions, like you say, and it does shift the mindset from I'm working at this big multi-billion-dollar company with almost historic business opportunity, and we're creating scarcities almost
Hmm.
out of nothing. Makes me think too of companies that don't have the same level of benefit, or the same level of profitability, the same level of sort of legendary innovation that our company did. How do they deal with some of this stuff? Because we had a lot of actual abundance that we treated as scarcity. Most people are dealing with an environment where there's actual scarcity.
Hmm.
And maybe that actually creates better resiliency among them. It's when you actually have to deal with real scarcity versus this faux scarcity that we did. I don't know. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to cultivate a mindset of actual abundance.
Yeah. The detox is interesting as well because to me, one of the things I mean, there was, I guess, two major things. One is that my identity, like, hey, who do you work
Yeah,
for,
right. That's
or what
right.
do you do? Which
What
is
do you?
at least in the U.S. culture, like one of the first questions. Which, by the way, I think is a horrible way to start a
It
conversation
is
because that's not who you are,
correct.
or at least all of who you are.
Yes,
I'm figuring out what's next and just being
yes,
comfortable with that question. And it took a while to shift that way.
yeah,
And kind of related to that is stop using the we when talking about Intel.
yeah. I know. I still fail at that. It's still we at
You and
times.
I probably will, it may come up here, but that's one. And then the other thing is the scheduling. We
Right.
had our entire week scheduled. We didn't have to think about what we were doing. I mean, we did in scheduling, but it was boom, 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 you move. And I was so against that at
Right.
first and
Hmm.
pushing back and saying, no, 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 I can't do any of this. But then I'm like, wait, a switch flipped. And I'm like, oh, it's agency is what my problem was. Like, I
Yes,
love
that's right.
having scheduled time, but
Mm,
I am scheduling it, not
yeah.
somebody else, not,
Right.
these other meetings that may not be as productive
Right. Right.
as
That's right.
what you can do. I'm gonna go schedule a time. I'm gonna go schedule
Yeah.
my swims. I'm gonna go schedule my reach out sessions and my podcasts. These are all things I get to choose.
Exactly.
The agency is a big interesting flip on that.
I like the thought around having agency. I think that's the biggest thing we lose in a large company. We really don't have a lot of agency. I used to use the term, we were professional meeting attenders, and oftentimes the terms and conditions under which we were attending those meetings were not of our choosing. How many times did you end up in a meeting where you're like, why am I here? What am I doing? And then you
Many
end
times.
up, yeah, most times, unfortunately, probably most times, probably the majority of time. And then you end up being disengaged from that meeting or
Mhm.
disengaged from that topic. And that's a loss for you and a loss for your colleagues who are in the meeting. They're not getting your best. You're not giving your best. And your engagement drops. And so when you have agency, like you're saying, I think it allows us the luxury. I mean, I think we're very lucky we get to do this sort of thing, but like agency allows you then to be fully engaged in what you're doing,
Mhm.
and engagement matters a lot, right? Engagement matters a lot. I think the other things that I'm worried about now. So people who know me know I like doing these long distance walks. I've walked the Camino de Santiago a couple times. Right before I left until I walked the Via Francigena in Italy, which was terrific. I'm planning a walk in February and March in Japan. And so just to get out and walk place to place. This isn't, I don't want to fool you. It's not like the PCT where you're eating like, trail mix and peanut butter for months on end and sleeping in a lean-to. You're actually staying in an actual, like, you're sleeping in an actual bed.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy doing these things because like mm, maybe it's agency. You're deciding how far you want to go. You decide where you want to stay. There really isn't a end point schedule unless you want there to be.
Mm.
And you get to explore in a very slow, measured way and really understand a place. So it enhances my concept of traveling and seeing the world. You get to really see how people live. And when we do this with my friends Peter, I always say, I would never in a million years end up in this little tiny place. Why would I end up being here on the coast of
Mhm.
Spain? I would never go to Gijón, Spain, which is actually a really cool big city. Why would I ever go there? But when you're doing these long distance walks, that's kind of a major stop on the Norte. And so you stay for a day and you're like, wow, this is so cool. I never would have gone here. I'm really
Mm.
thankful for the opportunity to have seen this place.
And it sounds like you don't have a itinerary. Like you're just
Yeah,
kind of stepping into uncertainty in a new
yeah,
space and going, all right, what is the
that's
next
right.
place we could
That's
maybe
right.
explore?
That's right. A lot of these walks are old pilgrimage walks. I'm not religious at all, but a lot of them have been done for the purposes of religion for many,
Hmm.
many years. The one in Italy, if you were you were a priest and were made the priest of your town in the ninth or 10th century. You had to go to Italy to get your stuff to prove to your flock that you were the guy. And I mean guy, because back then it was
Yeah.
male.
Yeah.
So you had to walk to Rome. There wasn't any other way to get there. So this trail is basically the old pilgrimage route to get to Rome. So you can kiss the ring and get your stuff. The one in Spain is a pilgrimage for Christian pilgrims to go to Santiago de Compostela, which allegedly has the remains of Saint Peter, one of them, as the remains
Yeah.
of one of them. Yeah, I don't know. There's a big giant church there, and so you're treading on these routes that have been walked by millions of people under all sorts of circumstances for 1,000 years, and that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Like you sort of are part of the human flow, if you will, and I really like that bit. The one in Japan I'm doing is south of Kyoto in Nagoya, and it's in a peninsula that has some of the oldest Shinto and Buddhist shrines in the country, called the
Mhm.
Kumanokoro. So I'm planning to do that in February,
Oh,
in
that's
March.
wonderful.
Yeah,
That's nice. Well, yeah, like, um, yeah, I think I love those times where you're just out there. I mean, I take my van out and again, I'm
sweet.
not sure where I'm going. I mean, eventually I'll get someplace and
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
have
yeah.
some destination, but, um, and this is actually part of the untraining. I don't think it's necessarily Intel. Maybe it's related to that or the corporate world, but
Right.
instead of going from point A to B as fast as you can.
Yeah, which is we are highly incentivized to do exactly
Yes.
that and criticized if we put a step wrong along the way in the corporate America, right?
Even self-criticism for me,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
it's like,
Yep.
no, I could have made that. I could have driven from San Francisco to Phoenix in a day, but I
Yeah,
take 1 day or 2 days or maybe 3. And I try to
exactly.
find, I love mountain biking. So I try to find the most random mountain bike place, like the
Sweet.
middle of
That's
Nevada
great.
and Winnemucca and ride and then talk to, like meet people if I can. I'm like, hey, what are you doing out here? And they're like, you're not local. I'm like, nope, I'm not.
No,
They know it right away because they know the 5 people who ride the ride or
right.
whatever, and so it's
Isn't that
fun to
it's
engage
just
with that.
isn't it cool like in that scenario you're kind of borrowing someone else's experience
Mhm.
or being I like the term being an observer, but you're not. You're participating in someone else's locality.
Yeah,
And if you can do that in a meaningful way, not do that in an, ugly American way or whatever, but do that in a respectful way, I think that's a really, it's a really great way to find human connection. I mean,
yeah,
you got people with common interests. They're obviously interested in the why the heck are you here? And then you end up having like on these walks, you end up you'll have a cohort sometimes where you walk with people for days and you get to know them a little bit as you walk along on the trail and you meet the most interesting people. Why are you here? What are you doing? Some people are on religious pilgrimages. Other people are just doing it for fun. This last walk I did, there was a guy that was walking, he was recovering. He was in recovery. So he was walking from Barcelona all the way to Santiago, which is a long, long way, and he was doing like 40 kilometers a day and he was sleeping wild. He was not doing it the same way that we were doing it. But he loved soccer and he was from England and we walked for 3 or 4 days and you just have these random interactions with people that you'd never in a million years think that you could. And it's like your story about mountain biking. Like, what are
gosh.
you doing here? So cool, right?
Yeah, have you journaled about this? Like, you should create a book about this.
There's a lot of people that have done. I have thought about it. I have not
Yeah,
done that. My wife's the writer, not me, but I suppose it's something I could do.
so you could
Um,
co-write or
yeah,
ghostwrite, depending
yeah,
upon what
exactly.
relationship you want.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. No, I've thought about that. I've not done it yet.
I
I
mean,
have
the
a lot of
stories are
pictures.
fantastic.
Yeah. There's a lot of really good material. I actually just this morning finished a book by a guy named Craig Maud who walked this exact same route that I'm going to be walking in
Mm,
a couple months. It's called Things Become Other Things. And it's just a collection of stories from this rural, rapidly aging, forgotten part of Japan and his interactions with people. It's exactly what we just talked about. He did it and then he wrote about it.
yeah.
And I love reading these stories. And these are the sorts of things, Peter, that you would never, likely never, have time to do in a corporate world because you just don't have the time and luxury to be able to
Oh, for
set
sure.
off without agenda.
Yeah, without an itinerary. You maybe
Yeah.
could do it, but it would be like, I have to do this, which is problem number
I got
1.
3 days and I have to
Yeah,
be here.
and you're
And
gonna do it in and you're not gonna have time to have these conversations,
That's
or
right.
at least the in-depth, and allowing them to, like, take their natural course.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I've also
Exactly.
found, I don't know if I assume you have, is at first when I'd meet these people, I'm like, "Hey, what's your favorite ride here?"
Yeah.
And
Right.
a lot of times they'll ride it with me. They'll basically guide me
Yeah.
through their favorite ride, and I'm like, "No, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no." Like, I thought it was a big inconvenience. I'm finding that they're like,
They
they
love it.
like doing that, and I'll do that
Exactly.
too if I meet somebody in Idaho or meet somebody in a trail that I'm
Yeah.
familiar with. I'm like, "Oh, you
Right.
gotta do this, and
Yeah.
let me show you this part, make sure you make
It's
the
great.
turn," or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's just having that conversation and being
Right.
of service, I guess, and kind of just
Right.
helping people.
People want to share, and I think if you're genuine and authentic, then you end up with that level of interaction and sharing that really binds a connection. It's not transactional. It's this sort of like you're doing something in a place that people love, an activity that they love to do. They're curious about you. You end up being curious about them, and then you have this sort of like interesting interaction with people. It's totally
Yeah.
different than I have a checklist and I have to tick off all these items and I have to pose in front of all of these landmarks and I have to then, say that I've done these things. I don't, who cares? It's
Yeah,
about the
the
experience.
check mark. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is, like, uncertainty and how leaders deal with it.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit, I think, about the uncertainty maybe in of leaving Intel,
Yeah. Right.
but maybe we could reflect back on some of our times together and maybe some of your times about when some of the initiatives you took on that maybe weren't clear.
Yeah.
Like,
We were trying to make our reference board platform, our reference board program coherent. Right? I won't have the numbers right anymore. This is going on 25 years ago, but there was at least four, maybe more references that we used to use that would be customer facing for how to build a PC out of the parts that we were making.
mhm,
I mean, for those that don't know or remember that time, I mean, Intel was a component maker, and the idea of showing people how to make a product like a complete, these are desktops back then,
yeah,
a complete desktop PC product out of a component from a semiconductor maker was kind of radical at the time. But the notion was unless we go figure out how to tell people and help them build a new platform, they're going to rely on their last generation or two generations back technology and they won't switch to the new thing, right? And our
mhm,
business model at the time, even more strongly than now, but the business model basically was we need you to buy the new thing because we want to be able to advance the technology that we put into the components. Our business model with respect to fabs and fab technology requires that we go from node to node. And it was a lot like that. Actually reminds me a lot of the AI race now. If you think about
mhm,
the way AI models are being created and supplanting each other on a rapid pace. That's kind of what semiconductor PC chips were back in the day. It's probably the closest analogy that we have
yeah,
is
yeah,
GPTX. We would come out with a new desktop PC chip every year. It was year or 18 months. So the idea basically was, okay, how do we help customers um, figure out how to build and scale products around these reference boards? And there was two uncertainties, right? There's an external uncertainty of how are we going to get them to do this? And there's an internal uncertainty of what's the best way for us to actually reconcile all the different competing constituencies and figure out how to create one reference design. There was a bunch of so we'll do the internal one first. There was a bunch of internal purposes. There was a purpose of we need to validate the chip. So there's a bunch of different ways to go do that, and there was a cacophony of different ways of boards that were created to go validate the chip. There was a reference design that we would do in the US that was mainly targeted at OEMs. And this is working with Rob McNair. You probably remember
mhm,
Rob McNair. So Rob
mhm,
was the leader of the AE group that you were probably a part of back then.
mhm. A little before my time, but yeah.
And this is just before Greg, right?
Mhm,
So this is before Greg. So we had a reference board program, and that would mainly go to OEMs. The Taiwan guys were creating their own set of reference boards in Taiwan that used different components than the US ones because they were trying to basically promote and accentuate the local ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. We were doing some internal work to do testing on the chips. So it was called Sort Test TD, the ATD guys. They had a platform, and we would plop a processor at the end of our manufacturing line in this board, and we would do socketed or random testing on it. So we knew that what we were shipping was actually good. And all these things had very different requirements. Actually, that's not true. They all had similar requirements, but they all had very different results. They had all different outcomes. So the internal uncertainty was we can't afford to do all this stuff. We're trying to scale, and we're not going to be able to go make 6 of these things. We got to be able to make 1 of these things, or maybe at most 2 of these things. How do we go do that? And so I was involved with reconciling all the different constituencies and trying to figure out how to satisfy that need and do it in a consistent way, right? We had to be really honest with ourselves about what was and wasn't working and what everybody individually got out of their
Hmm.
reference board. And that was hard because in a large company, as we well know, there's entrenched interests, and the we always do it this way gene is prevalent. So leading that team through the uncertainty of trying to figure out how to add this or redact that or otherwise optimize, that was like a 3 or 4 year journey to get right. But we eventually were able to figure out ways to satisfy the important things of what everybody wanted. The most important thing, I think, in getting that done was listening to what people really needed,
Mm.
working with them as to why they did things the way they did, and then coming up with solutions that satisfied their most important needs. Oftentimes we would, in more modern ways, you'd write a PRD or and have a big debate about a PRD, but I don't think a PRD and the writing of it really gets at the real heart of the problem. It's like you can write a
Right.
PRD and have it be 1,000 pages and still be misaligned. It could probably be a
Yeah, I
hundred
like
thousand pages.
because I like what you're talking about is about listening for the why, that what's underneath it. And
Exactly.
it's not listen for the solution, it's listen for the underneath so you can create in this case, a
Exactly.
common solution across multiple
Exactly.
stakeholders, multiple
Exactly.
needs.
The OEMs typically they wanted something that they could productize. The Taiwan guys wanted something that they could go populate their own local, at the time it was, there was no China. It was Taiwan and local component suppliers in Taiwan. They wanted something that they could demonstrate with their partners how their stuff could be used so that they could then bring them along and win a competition against AMD and other competitors at the time. The Sort Test TD guys had this requirement where they needed a special socket. So, because instead of for those that don't know, desktop PCs, the CPU goes into a socket that you could actually take and remove the thing. That was a big deal in desktops. Um, they'll last for about 50 to 100 socketings, and then the contacts wear out. That's not adequate for Sort Test TD. They needed a platform that could last for probably 1 million socketings. So we
Mhm.
had to come up with a way, listen to them and understand the requirement, and we had to come up with a way of coming up with integrating a different socket on the same actual printed circuit board that then allowed them to do that. The validation guys needed better observability of the device itself. So what they wanted special circuitry that then allowed them to be able to go see inside the device in a way that may not be present in a commercial product. The analog validation guys, however, valued what we called in situ validation. They wanted to see not the perfect, observable, best conditions, lowest noise possible condition that is present on the device. They wanted to make sure they had a way of seeing how most people were going to deploy the thing so they could catch bugs. And so you had all these competing things, and everybody
Right.
was like militant about their own demonstration of it and understanding what they all wanted, and then working collaboratively with them on solutions. Another thing, Peter, too, we had to do is you had very, very smart, very driven people in each of these organizations, and we had to shelve our individual ego or desire to be the leader in service of a collective outcome that was better for
Mhm.
the whole. And that was also very hard to do because everybody wants to lead and people want to be recognized
Yeah.
for that. This very well, our leadership, technical leadership criteria and the technical leadership recognition that we did also was biased towards individuals sort of winning a lone wolf inventor competition, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
So everybody was pursuing this. I want to be a principal engineer and eventually a fellow. In order to do that, I have to be seen, be seen as the only technical leader that can do X, Y, Z. That created another constraint that we had to bust through. But we
Yeah.
got there, and that program still exists today. It's
Yes.
actually probably one of my favorite things I did at Intel. We
But
still
I'm
run it.
so here's
Yeah.
what I'm more curious about is that if I simplify, you had, I don't let's just say 5 different needs, 5 different people who have 5 different
Yeah.
solutions, 5 different egos, and it took some time, but how did you get the egos
Yeah.
to be parked? How did you stay committed to doing this and not just going, "Ah, screw it, let's just do
And not
5?"
throw our hands up. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. In some ways, constraints can be good. So we had a constraint of we can't afford to do that. So it was pretty obvious. So we had leaders that were saying to us as sort of middle management, you guys got to figure out a way to do this. And I actually am very grateful for appropriate goal tension and goal pressure
Mhm.
added by leaders. So that's one factor. It wasn't like, you know, fail or else, but it was certainly a this is a goal that we want to achieve. So that's right. And then we took it in pieces. We didn't try and have be the snake that swallowed the watermelon all at once and digest it. We broke the problem into pieces. It wasn't necessarily the one that was the easiest to solve. We changed first. We picked one we thought that we could get away with and had a willing partner, and then we made some changes. So the five became four, and then the four became three. And over multiple generations, it became clear that we were able to execute and deliver. And you got I think with any group like that where you've got egos involved, you've also got to earn trust. Trust is earned, not given. No one is going to just go, okay, you guys go ahead, make this change, integrate my requirements into your platform, and then we'll see what happens. We had to earn trust by working with other groups. I distinctly remember one platform. I think it was Brookdale G. I don't remember the actual external name for it, but it was an integrated graphics version of the Brookdale chipset.
Mhm.
And we created the platform, we integrated a bunch of requirements. The validation guys were using it for the first time, and it had problems. It had bugs. And we had built a model where we were working on the next one, and I got a call from John Barton. If you remember John,
Mhm.
he's was a VP or CVP of validation. Turned out to be a very good friend of mine over the course of many years, but this was not a friendly phone call. He calls me up and he goes, "Dude, I'm trying to deploy this stuff. I've got to validate the chip. We've got a schedule we've got to keep, and your boards are breaking. You got to fix this. I'm not going to use you next time." And I'm really grateful for how he handled that conversation because it could have gone a lot of different ways, but he basically said, I'm going to give you guys X amount of time. Here's what I need. And I want you guys to then go fix it. And those disruptions or seeming, negatives turned out to be massive positives for the group because we rallied around the problem. We figured out how to go fix it. We deployed people into his labs to like desolder and resolder parts onto these boards. Blue wires, you remember blue
Yeah.
wires. We were
Yeah.
actually soldering blue wires on the back of boards to fix a bug for a while until we could deploy, a fix to them. And 6, 9 months later, we get to the end, and I remember Barton, we're sitting around at some leadership thing, and he's just like, dude, you guys really delivered for us. Thank you. So that's an example of what I think you talk about
Yeah.
a lot on the podcast is these moments of crisis or these moments of challenge. Really, if you have an abundance mindset, can end up being opportunity moments, and it really
Yeah.
bound the group together better. I mean, it sure didn't feel like it at the time, but they rarely do.
Yeah. It didn't sound like this was a personal or taking down
Right.
or
That's right.
berating because that doesn't benefit him or you
Doesn't help anybody.
at the
Exactly.
time. But I think having clarity of this is what I need,
Right.
this is the time, and get it done. Like,
Yeah.
get your
That's
shit
right.
together and let's get together and make
Yeah.
this work.
He was brutally honest with us, and that's exactly what we needed. That's what
Mhm.
we needed to hear. My boss at the time was Zane Ball. And I remember Zane also, he could have taken the what's wrong with you, you as an individual, what's wrong with you approach. He didn't. He was just like, look, you guys know you need to get this fixed. I trust that you will get it fixed. Let me know how I can help. And so,
Mhm.
that sort of that empowerment and trust, we'd earned some of that trust, but that empowerment and trust that Zane showed in me and the team allowed us to be able to just get on with it, as opposed to
Yeah.
worrying about, oh, am I going to get fired and what are we going to do? And A little bit of goal pressure is fine. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of goal pressure. A lot of goal pressure that ends up being irrational, or goal pressure, as you know, that comes from 7 or 8 different places where it's basically a pylon. That's also not going to be all that helpful.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate. I count was both Zane and John among mentors in my time at Intel, and certainly it was their technical acumen, but also the way they handled situations like this really allowed us to do what we needed to do. I think
It's yeah, I was gonna
Greg
say it's
and the AE team, you guys had a lot of situations like this where Greg and the teams also afforded you guys the ability to just, you know, crack on with it, which is great.
yeah, I mean, knowing from a customer what is not right and
Yes, that's right.
why their line's down or why this is preventing their product from shipping,
That's right.
anything like that, and then having the clarity of, okay, this is what it is. And what I was thinking is there's the goal in this example, there's the goal of saving money and having a common reference design. Kept the consistency or the common direction, the common vision, so people are aligning to it. You talked about building trust and building trust and momentum, 5 to 4 to 3, and kind of
Yeah,
having those continue to build. I also like the fact that this incident within here helps them build some trust. Like, okay,
that's right.
if you didn't, I mean, not that problems are good, but problems are inevitable. And
That
when they
that's right.
happen, it's how do you deal with it and with each other in a way that moves forward, not
That's
just
right.
technically for the solution of this actual validation board, but the trust in the team and your knowledge of what that took so that you can apply that learning and all that kind of
Yeah.
momentum and trust building.
The word that comes to mind in those situations is we had already built resiliency, and then when the test came, that resiliency paid itself back. And
Mm.
instead of it being a resiliency sink, it ended up helping build additional resiliency with the team. And then we were able to go on and do different things. The thing about that too is we learned from it and we made substantive changes to how we handled not just crises, but the designs themselves in subsequent years, because you don't want to live through those things again. But if you can positively learn from them, then you can figure out ways to make things more resilient, technically more resilient. We added and changed our staffing model that we used for products, internal products. And I think building resiliency ends up being one of the upshots of this whole thing. It was something that the team told stories about later on in later years that everybody remembered as a collective experience and a positive. I still talk to people from that team. Many aren't at Intel anymore, but I'm friends with people that were on that team, that worked in the team, and we still talk about this time as a formative time in all of our not just careers, but sort of our mindset. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Something you're proud of. I mean,
that's right. That's right.
yeah, it's a weird way of saying, a mistake happened, or I don't even know if a mistake, but
Stuff
you,
happens, and
you
we
had
we
an issue.
responded. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. We had an issue, and the way we responded is more the point than having the issue. And I do think, Peter, today we've lost some of this dealing with mistakes in a positive way. I do see more personalization of mistakes happening.
Mm.
I see people both dishing out personalization and then people maybe receiving feedback as personal. And that's a shame, because I actually think that, especially for people that are new leaders or younger leaders, these things can have pretty major swings on sort of the directionality of your career or your mindset.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for young leaders to recognize your teams will have crises. How you handle it matters a lot. How you handle a crisis or an issue, an incident with your bosses also matters a lot. You can't pick the manner of how they arrive, but know they will, and prepare yourself for the time for when they do, how you're going to behave. Maybe the message is like, don't leave it to chance. Think about and make your mindset appropriate such that you can use it to your advantage.
Mm. Perfectly said. Yeah. You don't need to or try to control, because
Very
control
good.
is a false, like
Very good.
it doesn't, it doesn't
It's a false
exist.
choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're fooling
And
yourself.
you can prepare for what's going to happen. I mean, you can prepare and you can have some agency of where you're going, but shit's going to happen.
Yes.
Failures are going to happen. And that word failure, I've been really struggling with because it has such a negative connotation, like experiment and fail or fail fast. And I love the notions, but I just, the word is like, oh, it's a negative thing. No, like, go experiment and find out some new stuff.
Yeah, I
Or
mean, our labs colleagues at Intel would do this. We had this mindset of go fail, but if you're gonna failure's okay. The only thing I'd like you to do is fail quickly and fail cheaply. Failing spectacularly, expensively, or with a long duration, you probably should ask yourself why you persisted. Failure and having quick learning cycles is essential for any leader to be able to build resiliency. It also, I think, helps leaders and organizations build this sort of like radical honesty and authenticity that is needed in order to really be leaders. If you again, let's not use the word. That's I like the way you're thinking about it. It's not really fair. If you're learning, if you're trying things and learning, whether these things end up being billion-dollar opportunities or just learning accelerants along the way to a billion-dollar opportunity, it's not really a failure. Whatever whatever the outcome is, it challenges the leader to be super honest about that innovation or that outcome. Is it going to work? Is it not? Are you shining on the team that this thing that isn't working is in fact actually working, and therefore prolonging this activity to the point where it's more expensive and more spectacular than it needs to be? Are you quickly learning and then integrating and folding what you've learned? Do people find ways to take and move through those failures or those learning opportunities quickly? Do you remember the do you remember the Timna story that Muli Eden told us? Do you remember this story?
I'm sure I will, but no, right now, off the top of my head, why don't you
Okay.
help me
This
out?
isn't, to be fair, this isn't my story. This is Muli's story, but he told it at a leadership gathering. So he was running mobile and we were all in desktop. And for those that don't know, Timna is a sort of inside Intel legendary product. It was we built it around the 2000s. It's never actually launched, but it was created by our team in Israel. And the idea was to do extreme integration. So this is integrated memory controller, integrated graphics, long before this became sort of like the norm, maybe a decade later. So it was a pretty innovative product. It was positioned as an entry level product. So we were building it to build and create something that was less expensive that we could still make money at. Okay. So the Israel guys created this real. It was an amazing product actually. We worked on the reference board for it. They created this really cool architecture that integrated everything together, and they were super bought into it. To a person, they wanted this thing to launch, and to the point of like, we will do whatever we need to tear down other things in order to be able to make sure that this thing gets launched. Well, there was problems. The integrated memory controller didn't quite work, so there was bugs and issues. There was marketing and positioning issues, and there was political issues. We'll spare the details, but the bottom line is it didn't launch. So Mooley's telling this story about how to move on from a failure, from a learning opportunity. And here's how it goes. So we cancel the product officially. People in Israel are pissed. There's people that are still working on the product after it's canceled because they believe so fervently that this is the right answer that they're just not going to give it up. Mooley tells the story of having conversations with lead architects and lead designers there, literally 2, 3, 4 months past the cancellation date, about what can we do to revive this. We have ideas. We made these changes. What can we do? So he gathers everybody in an all hands meeting. They do these regularly in Israel. He gathers everybody in an all hands meeting, and he does a simple thing to get people to learn and move on. He goes, "Okay, guys, we've been working on this thing. It's been canceled. I really appreciate everyone's passion. The ideas that we applied into this will end up being applied." I was the Sandy Bridge processor like 9 years later, where we basically integrated all those ideas. But I need you to realize one thing. And he used two PowerPoint slides. The first PowerPoint slide was the symbol of the product, which was an ibex, like a Middle East goat
Mhm.
horn thing. That was the symbol of the product. Guys, and he's talking in his Israeli staccato, right? Guys, this is Timna. This was Timna yesterday. It's the ibex, okay? And it's great, and we love it. This is fantastic. Now I need to show you what Timna is today, okay? And he puts the second slide up, and it's a piece of meat roasting on a barbecue. And he goes, "Listen, I need you to understand, Timna is dead, okay? We cooked it. It is cooked. We are done. Move on." And I really appreciate not just the story, but also the mindset of being so radically honest with these fervently believing people on this product. They had poured everything that their whole sort of professional lives into making this thing work. He had to be that honest with them about here's the status of things. You have to move on. And that's actually part of the reason why our Israel team has been so see, I just said our Intel. Intel's Israel team has been such an important part of Intel's product cycle
Hmm.
because they are able to then take and learn and move on and go to the next thing. But it's exactly what I think we're talking about is being super honest when required and helping people see the world as it is, not maybe as they would like it to be.
And it's maybe back to, I think, two things: the abundance we've talked about, but also so it's not scarcity. In other
Yeah,
words,
not
if we
very good.
if this doesn't get onto this product, it's get dead forever.
Yeah,
Whatever
not
technology or
true.
ever idea you had,
That's right.
there's always another product.
Exactly.
So and this fail quickly or move on when the data is showing and the evidence is quite clear that you should,
Yeah. Yep.
instead of holding on and grasping and hanging on. But
Right. Exactly.
yeah, just really engaging with being honest, being there, and then moving forward, moving to the
Yes.
next thing.
Right. Exactly. And not categorizing it as an abject failure. Uh, Related story quickly on that same product, Timna. We were doing the reference board for it, and so we had built this really strong relationship with the Israel team. And this is 2000, 2001. So if you think about the era of 2000, 2001, this is emails and a prehistoric, almost like a Mesozoic era internet. Tools that didn't share anything with each other. So if you wanted to make a change in a technical aspect of the product, you had to send emails back and forth and actually read documents and line out things. We weren't doing this
Yeah,
sort of thing. Andy was trying to do video conferencing at the time, but it was
yeah.
nothing like what we're
Oh,
doing
there's
right now.
almost dial-up back then.
It was almost dial up back then. You got it exactly right. You got it exactly right. So we were working on this thing and we had followed the plot with these guys because they had made a change to the memory controller and they had made another change to the chip and we had this memory hub that we had built outside of the main device to be able to do memory expansion. You can kind of tell it wasn't going in a good direction, if you will. But we followed it all the way down the path because that's what we were doing. So I was the leader of the boards team and it was board design, board validation, our manufacturing team, the program management team, the BIOS team, basically this extended group. Not all of them were part of the group that I was leading, but we were sort of the presumptive leaders of it as the board guys. And so we killed Timna. We heard the speech from Mooley at this leadership conference. And I decided at the end of this thing, we were going to celebrate our own sort of end of the Timna project. And so we literally went to an Irish pub and we held a wake for the product.
Oh, that's
The
wonderful.
program manager and I decided we need to mark this somehow, and we want to do it in a way that's sort of consistent with the culture of the group at the time. So we literally had a wake. And the story I always like to tell about wakes are nobody likes going to a wake, but you go anyway because there's usually singing and there's usually drinking. So like that's absolutely what happened at the thing. We handed out a few end of project awards. We did a few speeches. We sang a song or two, and we were done. And
That's great.
it was a way of putting it in the rearview mirror and figuring out what we could then archive and learn for the next project.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I mean, there's several models that talk about, like, after a change, which is usually like the external thing that happens, the transition and how do you deal with it.
Right. Right.
And there's kind of three parts to it. There's the long goodbye is what which I like to say.
Yeah.
And then there's the messy middle of, oh crap, what the heck am I doing next? And then the
Right.
new beginning. And it's not always in that order. And for this one, it may, like you may have started something new and go, okay, now what are we doing? And jump to the messy middle and then come back eventually to the long goodbye. But it's celebrating. It's
It's
simply saying,
celebrating.
look,
That's what it
this
was.
happened, it's there, but it's also that closure.
Correct.
And, a lot of these models are saying that if you don't really have some sort of all three of those, you
Mhm.
don't get through the transition. Or another way of saying it, a transition period can be really elongated if you don't
Yes.
engage with those. And I think
Yeah,
Muli's
yeah.
example of
Well, that is
engineering is 5 months later working on something is a long goodbye. I mean,
that's
there's
a
a
long
non
goodbye.
goodbye, right?
Yes.
It's denial to some extent, but and maybe it's also a lack of clarity of what's the new beginning.
Hmm.
Like people in the messy middle, sometimes it's a time of disruption and a lot of nervousness because they're not sure
Yes,
what's going on. So they're stressed.
exactly.
But the other thing is that's when the creativity can happen because you're
Yes,
not constrained by what you were doing and you
yes,
haven't figured out what you're doing yet. And if you
right.
can sit and wallow in that, which is what I like to say, like wallow in that messy middle to see what emerges and go, "Oh, wow, there's all this new way we could work, new idea, new thing, between
It,
products or whatever."
it's really well put. It's almost like you give the team a gift by providing the space to be abundant. Another example maybe of that, again, back on the boards. A lot of these are 2 decades old examples, but I think they still work. We used to do this thing for every project, and it was literally called a postmortem.
Mhm.
I remember Ronnie Borkar going, "You can't call it postmortem. That assumes the patient is dead." I'm like, okay, that's actually a good perspective as well. She called them a
Yes.
retrospective as opposed to a postmortem. But fine. Back then we called it a postmortem. And we always wanted to take some time, figure out what went well, what didn't go well, take stock of the top three, five, whatever things we were going to implement different and move on. Projects typically were too long though. So you'd be working on something, what, 3 years,
Yeah. Well,
two,
I mean,
three
if it
years?
was the TikTok model back in the days, if we
Hmm.
just say that, I mean, as every year is one or the other, but those durations were anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending upon
Exactly.
architecture timeframe, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah,
So
it's a long time.
you have somebody working on something for 3 to 5 years, and it's impossible. It's really difficult to ask somebody to stop at the end only and go, "What did we learn?" Even if you're stopping at the end and saying, "What did we learn?" You're only applying that to the next project to start. You're not applying that to a nested project that's mid-flight. All those ships have already sailed. So we instituted a thing that we called the mid-mortem, which, the
You're
analogy
partially
is
dead.
the
You're
patient isn't
partially
all the
dead.
way dead. We're going to assess what happened, which is horrible, but we didn't have any other language at the time. We probably should have thought of something better than that, but we did. We called it the mid-mortem. And it was at an appropriate time in the middle of a program. It was after we had taped something out and before we got the thing back. And those of people that don't know how chips or boards work is you do a bunch of work, you get to a point where you release the files, you have that's a big, exhale point because you're done with the work. It's not done, it's like a milestone. And then there's some time. So we use that time in between rather than, have everybody go take 3 weeks of vacation. We would have them take 2 weeks of vacation and then we'd spend a week going through what happened in the first phase. And we did it to keep the memories fresh, but on also to apply what we've learned into the next thing almost immediately. And it was great. People found that a really energizing exercise because humans want to learn and improve. They don't want to fall into the same trap. Einstein's definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result. People
Yeah.
don't want to do that. They want to be able to figure out ways to improve. And so it became a practice for
Mhm.
us. We engaged groups like, the AE group and the validation group of, did you guys feel included in the discussion? Did you get what you wanted? If not, why not? What can we do better? Did we actually include customer feedback in what we designed or not? If not, why not? That sort of thing. And so it was a good process to do.
Yeah.
And it helped institutionalize learning. I don't feel we do things like that as much anymore. It's almost like we don't provide space for it. And I think those spaces, it's an abundance mindset. And this book on Japanese walking I'm reading, the Japanese have a word. I can't remember the name of the word, but the word means the space between what you need and what you have. It's this space of
Mm.
abundance. We'll have to look it up. Maybe we can look it up and
Okay. Yeah.
do it later. But it's a feeling of abundance beyond what you have, but beyond what you need up to what you have. And you want to try and cultivate as much of that as possible
Mm.
and keep that sacred as a space. Because in that, as you said, Peter, that's where a lot of creativity and opportunity exists. If you're
Yeah.
just doing the minimum, you're going to get what I have always called vicious compliance. People will do exactly what they're asked and no more. They're not going to do any more because they
Mhm.
feel like
Vicious compliance. I like
they'll
that.
comply, but viciously so.
Yeah.
If you end up with this Japanese word for the gap, the positive gap, then you end up with creative ways
Mhm.
to get things done. Remember, an engineer in our group, he was responsible for helping the chipset guys with the ball map of the chipset. It's one of the most important board layout. It's the interface basically between the chip and the chip package and the board itself. And it was this almost like months long thankless task of this pin goes there, this routing, that route goes there. We would just do this, iterate it, iterate it, iterate it, iterate. And during that time, this engineer built a tool, an Excel tool, and we ended up using that tool as a way of improving our efficiency on the next 5, 6, 7 projects. And that never would have been an opportunity if we wouldn't have taken advantage of our Japanese word for abundance, whatever that is.
Yeah, what comes to mind is like push pull. So instead of pushing somebody to do something, and then that's where they'll just do it
Yep.
to your point to a certain level, but like pulling them to go, oh, well, like I don't know what is in that gap, but let's go see what's possible.
Let's go see what's possible. And you know what? If something doesn't result, if an outcome that isn't $1 billion idea doesn't result, maybe it's an accelerant to another one, and that's okay.
There's learning.
Yeah,
So it's not a failure. This is
that's
where
right. It's no
and
failure.
learning to me isn't complete either. They're like,
I know. I
I don't
don't have
know.
the right word either. It's a really good point.
Maybe we need to go to other languages. Maybe other
Yeah,
languages have a better
maybe
idea,
The Japanese usually
positive.
have a better idea for things like this,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, you're right. I don't like the word learning either.
Yeah. Well, I love this idea about radical honesty and also authenticity. I think we've talked quite a bit about radical honesty, but what does authenticity mean to you?
I think it's important for leaders to fulfill is be themselves. I mean, people know when a person that they're dealing with is not being themselves. People know if they're faking it. And it's different than honesty, right? Honesty is like, look, here's the deal. Authenticity is more sort of I know I'm having a genuine interaction with somebody, not a transactional interaction. The classic example is used car salesman, but I don't think that really meets the point. I'll start with the positive. The positive is when you have an authentic relationship with somebody, there's nothing that's off limits or there's
Mm,
nothing that's hidden. And that doesn't mean it's inappropriate. That's not what I mean. I mean, you have a relationship where all topics are in bounds and all topics are in bounds for the right reasons. You can be authentic with somebody. Share a story, share a personal story, share an experience, and have that repaid with a mutually authentic relationship.
mm,
You and I worked together over 20 plus years. We didn't
mm.
work together every day, but we worked together frequently. And I believe the relationship that we were able to strike was an authentic one. And the evidence I have of that and other authentic relationships is that we would interact on a different topic than before. Maybe you
Yeah.
do working IPU stuff, and I was working on AI architecture or in the architecture team, and we found reasons to converse that were outcome based. But the basis of that relationship was the authentic relationship that we had built. We weren't trying to get something out of each other. It wasn't like
Right.
transactional. So that's the positive. I think the negative, the opposite, the kind of I know it when I see it kind of thing is people trying to get something from other individuals or other groups. And when you know that it's for us, either a selfish or a singular purpose, I think as a human, you're a lot less likely to entreat those requests if you know
Mhm.
it's not authentic.
Yeah.
Um, Non-authentic requests or non-authentic relationships have a tendency to create a lot of noise in the background. Well, what is that person after? Why did she ask me that? What's the real game? What is he really after? And then
Mm.
you'll talk to colleagues about it, like what is she on about? He asked me for
Yeah.
this. Why did he ask me for that? What's going
It's
on?
like
And all
transitional,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's like
Exactly. Total
it's not with the
transactionality.
long term. Like it's a
Yeah,
short term.
correct.
Like I need this.
Correct.
Usually self serving in my experience,
Yes.
and not necessarily about a long term thing.
Correct.
And also can be so very hard to interpret and needing this wasted time of trying to have like triangulate and all this other
Yeah.
thing around authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. Because you check. Maybe the point is inauthenticity breeds suspicion. Authenticity avoids suspicion.
Mhm.
And that suspicion is a absolute killer for engagement and trust.
It's very inefficient. I mean,
Incredibly so. Incredibly.
and with authenticity, you said that it's within the boundaries, and this is positive and negative. So, like, if I don't agree with something you're going, I'm like, hey, I don't agree with you.
Exactly.
And it's not saying you're wrong. It's just, I don't agree with you. Like, let's have a conversation about this
Exactly.
so I don't have to go to your other engineers on your team and try to understand what's in your head. Like, I'm
Yeah,
going in your head, not in what their
precisely.
head is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're having an authentic conversation. There's nothing that's off limits. Now, when you have an authentic conversation or have an authentic relationship, you can then I think it enhances honesty. You can be honest about, well, look, my boss wants X, or the group that I work in thinks that it is pursuing an outcome of this. And you can then check those assumptions a lot more
Mhm.
readily versus maybe carrying a lot of either bad assumptions or not sharing something that you may be uncomfortable with,
Yeah.
right? And then for me, the most important thing, there's the specific thing that you're trying to get done, but more important than that even is what we talk about with long-term relationships, especially for people that work in big companies. Any individual interaction is just one of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of interactions that you will have with individuals, and ensuring that you have the ability to authentically relate to other people isn't just good for you as an individual, doesn't just promote your own engagement, but also is good for the enterprise.
Right.
Because as you say, Peter, I think you said it, you nailed it. It's the most efficient way to behave. I don't question your motivation. I don't question why you're asking. We just have an interaction. I may not agree with your motivation and I may not agree with the outcome, but we'll have an honest conversation about that as opposed to trying to second guess. How many slides, and I use slides specifically, how
Yeah.
many slides are created just trying to manage the expectations of an inauthentic conversation or an inauthentic relationship?
Mhm. And just to be clear with everybody, slides mean PowerPoint
Slides being
presentation, which
powered
is
by
a
and
thousand
Intel speak.
percent of what Intel worked on. And
Yes,
actually, I just interviewed with Josh, and he he was using the same thing about
slides.
PowerPoint versus actually writing a vision for
Yes.
like Evo. Also, writing a presentation for what you think that person you're presenting or the decision maker wants to hear
Yes, exactly.
or wants to hear instead of should hear. Or
Yes.
and what came up to me is this relationship you're talking about. A relationship is really boring, I think, is how she put it in her book. It's a book I was
Mm,
reading.
mhm, mhm.
Is really boring without conflict.
Mm, yeah, it's a good
You
point.
have to have some level of conflict because you and I can get into it for like Seattle versus San Francisco
Yes.
team
Yeah.
now, and there would be some
That's juicy.
spice in there.
That's right.
Yeah, and then there's some interest, and it's also authentic.
Yes.
And back to, like, the honesty as well, like, you can get to the point where you're honest, the radical
Yeah.
honesty, which I like.
I like that characterization. Any so maybe that's the tell is an authentic relationship and an honest relationship has some degree of healthy conflict or some
Mhm,
degree of healthy disagreement. Those who are married, I would argue that your marriage without a healthy degree of conflict or a healthy degree of tension is probably a lot less interesting than when it is.
mhm. Or it's hiding something, right?
Yes, that's
I
right.
mean, or it's suppressing and all that energy of having to go do
That's
that.
right. That's right. When I'm the least good husband I can be, I'm typically quiet and unengaged, and it's because I'm not wanting to engage or disclose something that's bothering me. I'm either fearful of conflict with my I don't feel I have the capacity at the moment to have that conflict,
Mhm,
but it's always there. When we are the happiest, when I'm the best version of a spouse I can be, and when we're at the best as a unit is when we are dealing with all of those conflicts, but in a positive way.
mhm.
Not every conflict can be positive, but if it's an abundance mindset that you carry into that relationship, then you're going to find a way to be able to work your way through it.
Yeah,
you're going to grow from it, and you're better enmeshed, if you will, in a spouse relationship than you were at the beginning. In a work relationship, you end up finding more ways to be able to then interact with that person in a genuine way. And it's better for you, it's better for your engagement, and it's better for the enterprise if you can go do that.
Yeah. And same thing from a team perspective. And when you were talking about
Yeah.
that, I was thinking about, if you're sitting on the sidelines of a team meeting because you're disengaged or you're not bringing your authentic self to that
Yeah.
meeting, one, you're wasting everybody's time,
Precisely.
specifically yours in that meeting.
Yeah.
Two, you're leaving a gift of not bringing that
That's right.
into that conversation. And even if it has nothing to do with what your technical area or your charter of your work is, you still have an experience that can always be brought into it.
I
And
agree.
even asking the naive questions are very useful, as you know. It is a question that I ask teams when I get engaged, like, how much conflict do you guys have?
Yeah. Right.
Like, and sit in a meeting. And is
Yeah.
everybody just listening to what the boss wants and going to do it?
It's a great example. The last team I was a part of at Intel was managed by someone who's a good friend of mine, um, but can be a little abrasive. And so often people wouldn't know how to deal with this person because sometimes this person would be very sort of, would make a strong statement, would challenge. And what happened in the room when people didn't have a sort of a good idea about this person or an authentic relationship is everyone would clam up. And it became a one-way street. And that's not a meeting anymore. It's a lecture,
Hmm.
and an uncomfortable
Or a
lecture.
dictatorship,
Yeah,
even worse, right?
exactly. It's not exactly. That's working in a large company is nothing like a democracy, but this made it further away from a
Yeah.
democracy. It became authoritarianism, right? To your point.
Mhm.
One of my roles, and this was something we never talked about, this other person and I never really talked about, but it was absolutely welcome because of the reaction that I got every time I did it, was to challenge the leader when that happened. Ask a question, even if it wasn't my area of expertise, make an observation, make a challenge. Well, I hear you saying that, but actually, I think maybe we should think about this way. Or I don't agree with that. Let me offer an alternative. And it was less uncomfortable for me because I happen to know this person, but
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Well, because it wasn't the norm of the group, right? The group was clamming up, as you said.
It wasn't the norm of the group. You know what was happening instead. Everyone was IMing each other. What in the F is happening? What does this person want? Everyone's IMing each other, trying to like figure it out. That's another like late stage big company endemic problem, is this sort of side channeling all the time is not healthy. I mean, we all did it.
Well,
I did it, but it's unhealthy.
it's very similar. How much debate happens and how much side channeling happens. You
Yeah.
ask that to two teams, and you can really quickly, I think, assess. And you don't have to. I mean, if you have the ability to actually sit in on a meeting, you can notice it like that. Because what I love pointing out is everybody thinks they're side channeling, and nobody knows they're side channeling.
Yes.
Everybody knows you're side channeling,
Everybody knows it.
and with whom, in many cases.
Yeah.
And it's
Exactly.
like,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's right. And this is what would happen. And my friend, the leader of the group, knew all this was happening and was very well aware of the dynamic. It's not like this person did not know what was happening. And part of it was purposeful to sort of like get action and make people uncomfortable. And so there's some purpose to that. That's cool. But the reaction to that reinforced what I would consider to be this sort of like your word, the authoritarian or the dictatorship behavior. And these meetings then ended up basically becoming almost like a morning. I'm going to use a horrible analogy. They were essentially like a morning march to the slaughter. You're going to get your marching orders. It's not going to be comfortable. Someone's going to present a slide. I'm going to fillet the thing, and then you'll go off and spend the next 3 or 4 hours trying to repair. And sometimes I think that was actually anti-progress, because what would end up happening is we would spend 3 or 4 hours trying to figure out, well, this person said this. Let's go figure out what this person really wanted. To your point earlier about making a slide or creating an outcome that was tailored for an
hmm,
individual. Sure, you got to do some of that. None of us are naive. You can't do the opposite. But if you end up spending the majority of your time trying to figure out what the person wants. And it's not authentic. It's just
Right.
to serve the transaction. Then you're not being productive.
And
It's another thing.
guessing at the transaction. I mean, to say it very naively or basically, it's a meeting is there so that things can be efficiently talked about.
Correct.
And if you have a one-way conversation and that leads to all this work trying to figure out possibly or what if and going around and it's like huge inefficiency. And you
Yeah,
multiply that
you
by the
got it.
number of meetings and the number of things that are happening just within one company.
Yeah.
It's staggering to me.
It's astounding. I used to. You're absolutely right. And remember, we would do we called it the decision review forum, DRF, I think is what it was
Yeah.
called.
Mm-hmm.
That was the big meeting, right?
Yeah.
And it was scheduled and controlled, and PowerPoint. I want you slides. PowerPoint was curated and reviewed and reviewed and reviewed and reviewed and redacted and reduced. Your leader liked everything to be 3 bullets and no more,
Yeah.
and just make the PowerPoint as simple as possible. Fine. By the time that meeting actually occurred, I can distinctly remember being in the room with the leaders of the organization and looking at each other going, we don't need to have this meeting because all of the work that has been done to curate and redact and review and massage basic and everybody knew what was going to be said. It was literally a ceremony. It was literally like
Yeah.
going into a church on Sunday and doing all the things. When I was a kid, I was raised Lutheran. I don't know if any, people who are on who listen were raised Lutheran. The Lutherans are funny. Two things. Number one, we're so darn Catholic, or we're so darn Protestant, we're practically Catholic. Number one. I don't practice anymore. And then the second is you sit in a Lutheran service and the actual like what you say is written for you. So it's literally a call and response. There's no mystery as to what is
Yeah.
going to be said in a Lutheran service. Like you go in, you get exactly what you paid for. Yeah, maybe the sermon is somewhat interesting, but Lutheran pastors have a tendency to play it pretty tight to the vest. It would the religious leader would say something and then you would say it back. And this would have this, week after week after week after week. I can still recite them from memory. And I haven't been
Yeah.
in a Lutheran church for 25 years. That was the DRF. It's sometimes, right?
It
It's
is.
like, you know exactly how I was going to go. What is the point? It's the most expensive meeting that we had all week. If it was called the discussion and review forum, maybe it would have been better. We weren't like the decisions were rubber stamped, basically. There was no discussion.
Right.
That's bad. That's a bad outcome.
Yeah. Also, maybe in some cases, the lack of delegation. Like
Yeah,
it
that's
didn't
right.
even need to go there, but
Yeah,
it went there because this is a big forum. And hey, if I don't bring it there, I can't get PE or whatever the
that I
personal
can't get
motivation is.
PE. I can't be seen as a leader. Sometimes we would kind of tie budgets to it, or other groups would say, was this approved in this forum because they had some other, religious
Yeah.
event that you had to go. We used to joke, right? You and I used to joke, like how many
Yeah.
churches, how many temples do you have to go to around the company and drop your coin in the box at in order to get this thing done?
Yeah. What made me think about it is that it'd be great just to walk in right on the board. Here's the decision I'm trying to make
Yeah.
and just give like a 2 or 3 minute thing and go, hey, what does everybody think?
You
And
know,
have the decision maker not say anything
right.
until maybe not everybody has spoke, but like a good conversation has
Right.
talked about. And what I always the other thing I love asking a team is how many times is an idea put out and
Mm,
people build on it as opposed to
mm.
fight about my idea versus your idea.
Yeah, that's right.
And if
Take
a decision
territory.
form is about it's mine or yours,
Yeah.
that's obviously a zero sum game and not a abundance type of
Yes.
instead of spiraling up, you're just entrenched.
Correct. Exactly. Exactly. And I would imagine you get to see a lot more diversity of operations than I ever did because I spent all my career in one place. I imagine that more often than not, it ends up still in this mine versus yours. I think there's a there's a human
Yeah.
nature aspect that I think is difficult to overcome. One of the things we tried to do to jumper around the problem. I tried two practices. One is a brazen steel from Amazon. The other one was kind of my own concoction. I don't know how well they worked or not, but I'll offer them as things to get out of the trap when you find yourself in this sort of trap. One, the brazen steel from Amazon is don't start with slides. Don't start with PowerPoint. Start with Word. Start with a different tool. The steal part from Amazon is Bezos didn't allow, I don't know what Jassy does, but Bezos didn't allow PowerPoint in decision meetings. They had a white paper. Now, I know from friends that work there, you probably also, Peter, have the same experience, talking with friends that have worked there. They did the same curation, review, insanity on those white papers as slides, right? So it doesn't prevent that. But what I did like about that mindset is it forced the presenters to write in complete sentences and paragraphs, which you really can't do on a slide, on a PowerPoint, what their purpose was, what they were asking for, and what their logic was. And on occasion, write a countervailing opinion, or not make it be a pitch. I don't like the term pitch because that assumes you're selling something. If you're
Right.
really going to have a discussion or a debate, then you need to have a complete discussion or a debate about everything. And
Yeah.
so we tried that a couple times. I wrote a white paper. This last project I was working on, we wrote white papers. We maintained a master white paper. And then every time we went in and had a review of it, we wrote a specific position paper or white paper for that meeting. And I sent it at least 2 days ahead of time. And did not, I did not countenance that they would not have read it. And so what that then allowed us to do in those is somebody would ask a basic question or come in 5 minutes late and asks, and they go, well, yeah, we covered that in the white paper, but I'll answer your question anyway. It's a little way of going, hey, we shouldn't be discussing this. I will still countenance
Yeah.
your question, but we covered this. And if you read the white paper, it'll do X, Y, Z. Maybe it was a little bit disingenuous on our part to use it that way. But at the very least, what it did in prep is it kept us
Yeah.
very aligned on what we wanted to say and why we wanted to say it. So that was trick number one. Trick number two was if I knew we were going to request a big decision, the practice before we even started writing anything in Word, we would do a constituency analysis. So this is a trick that I learned from Greg, from you guys in working with customers. If you're going to
Hmm.
go and talk to a customer, you have to exquisitely know your constituency. Who are you talking to? What do they want and why do they want it? And not they want this because they had a bad day sort of thing, but what are they genuinely, what is their goal? What do they want? What are they trying to accomplish? How is the thing that I'm going to be talking to these people about? How does that fit into what they want? And you can take that the wrong way, which is how do I sell to them?
Yeah.
But you can also take it in a more authentic way, which is I'm having an interaction with another leader. My assumption is that their intentions are genuine, that they have an authentic outcome that they're trying to get to. And I want to be able to have a conversation with them. I want to speak with them. How do I engage them? How do I make it so they don't go to IM or like get distracted? What are the things that I can do in this topic that then adds to the build on effect that you just talked about, right? How do I get a conversation going? And so we
Yeah.
would do this practice. It didn't always work. People were people. Sometimes we didn't find a good topic or a good hook, if you will, for having a genuine conversation with somebody in a large meeting like that. And if that happened, I would tell them sometimes, I'm like, hey, Steph, she was running the business clients of Steph. I'm not sure this is going to be an interesting topic for you. Maybe I'm going to give you the option to not participate because maybe this isn't
Yeah.
going to be a good use of your time. So some good comes of it and that they can go do something else.
Yeah.
But
It's
if you do these,
authentic.
yeah, that's right. I mean, like, I'm not trying to fool you. Now, if GB, if your boss wants you in here for other reasons, I can't help that. But like for this topic, I'm
Yeah.
just going to tell you. So those two tricks, I think, really helped improve or increase the authenticity of the big meeting. And they also helped us sort of bring honesty to the
Hmm.
conversation. And you need a receiver that's willing to receive it. It was not the norm. People like to sit and like fire arrows at their PowerPoint, and so sometimes it
Yeah.
didn't work. But I felt good about those as practices because I felt like even for our own team, it got our heads in the right space. You know.
Thank you for listening to part one of my conversation with Chris Kelly. I wanted to offer a few suggestions on how to work with the themes we covered. Chris reminded us that leading through uncertainty begins with mindset. Shifting from scarcity to abundance opens space for possibility. Ask yourself, Am I operating from abundance right now? Shelving our ego helps us collaborate at a deeper level. Start by understanding the why beneath someone's position and seek to collaborate from that place. And when egos grow strong, borrow Chris's language and offer, now might be a good time to shelve or park our egos. To counterbalance the practice of personalizing mistakes, I offer two things. Talk openly about your own mistakes and share what you have learned. And second, when you see a mistake that everyone knows about, bring it into the discussion, acknowledge it, appreciate the learning, and if appropriate, ask those involved if they have anything to add. Resiliency is not toughness, it is the capacity to recover and continue. Do not try to control everything or prevent all disruptions, but rather optimize for what you can expect, but prepare to be disruptive. Uncertainty will bring the unexpected, so have a mindset and a process that helps you notice and respond quickly. Brutal honesty here is a great tool. Capture learnings. Don't let them evaporate or be ignored. Create time and space to do this, and then apply them. Avoid the trap of vicious compliant, where people only do what is required. Create a compelling vision that pulls people forward and give them autonomy to step toward it. Lastly, challenge others and notice how effective it can be. Ask questions, make observations, challenge assumptions, and bring the conversation that's needed into the room. This conversation is not over. In part two, Chris and I shift into a different story. He takes us inside a complex leadership transition in Malaysia, where an entire organization was being reshaped in real time. We explore how leaders rebuild confidence, create momentum, and guide teams through uncertainty at scale. I hope you will join us for part two. Thanks for listening to Roar Mindset, Leading Through Chaos. Disruption isn't going away, but you can embrace it and turn it into an advantage. Until next time, stop fighting disruption, lead with clarity, and thrive in uncertain times.